Welcome to Larry Reedy's America. This is episode P20, being president, the 20th president of the United States, James A. Garfield. This is going to be a very short review because James Garfield just wasn't in office long enough to accomplish anything. And I'll just read you. I took this off the History Channel, and he's worth mentioning, but he just wasn't in office long enough to do anything. So James Garfield was born 1831, died in 1881. He was sworn in as the 20th U.S. president in March 1881, and he died in September the same year from an assassin's bullet, marking his tenure in office the second shortest in U.S. presidential history after William Henry Harrison. Born in an Ohio log cabin, Garfield was a self-made man who became a school president in his mid-20s. During the U.S. Civil War, he fought for the Union and rose to the rank of Major General. Garfield, a Republican, went to represent his home state in the U.S. House of Representatives, where he served from 1863 to 1881. In 1880, a divided Republican Party chose Garfield as its dark horse presidential nominee. After winning the general election, his brief time in office was marked by political wrangling. In July 1881, Garfield was shot by a disgruntled constituent and died less than 3 months later. So, inaugurated March, shot 1881 at July, and was helpless until he died. He is the only person less time to serve in the White House than James Garfield. Okay, we know that. We've already talked about. William Henry Harrison. So let's see. Okay, as a reader of adventure novels, Garfield aspired to become a sailor. Instead, as a teen, he settled for a position towing barges up the Ohio Canal to help support his impoverished family. Garfield attended Western Reserve Electric Institute, now Hiram College, in Hiram, Ohio. He spent 2 years at Williams College in Williamstown, Massachusetts, and proved himself to be a strong student and a skilled public speaker. After graduating from Williams in 1856, Garfield returned to the Electric Institute and taught Greek and Latin, as well as other subjects. A year later, in 1857, he was named president of the school. In addition to his duties at the Electric Institute, Garfield became an ordained Christian minister and studied law independently. He would be admitted to the Ohio Bar Association in 1860. In 1858, he married Lucretia Rudolph, who worked as a teacher and had been a classmate of his at the Electric Institute. The couple would have 7 children. In 1859, a member of the Republican Party was elected to the Ohio Senate. With the threat of the American Civil War looming, he used his position as a state senator to advocate for forcing succeeding Southern states to rejoin the Union. When the Civil War broke out, Garfield joined the Union Army and served as lieutenant colonel with the 42nd Ohio Volunteer Infantry. Despite his lack of military experience, he proved to be an effective leader. In November of 1861, his brigade drove forces out of eastern Kentucky at Paintsville and Prestonburg. He also saw action at the Battle of Shiloh, the Siege of Corinth, and the Battle of Chickamauga while serving in the Army. Garfield was elected to represent his home state in the U.S. House of Representatives. Initially reluctant to resign his post, Garfield eventually convinced to do so. So by President Abraham Lincoln, he left the military in late 1863, having achieved the rank of Major General. Garfield began serving in the House in December of 1863 and would remain in Congress until 1881. During this time, he served on a number of important congressional committees. However, his career was not without its challenges. In a political period marked by scandal and corruption, Garfield's ethics were called into question when he was accused, but never found guilty, of accepting briberies in the credit mobilier scandal of 1872. A moderate Republican, Garfield had to appease both wings of his own party, the stalwarts who were the conservative, old guard Republicans, and the half-breeds who were moving towards progressivism. This was especially difficult maneuvering when Garfield served on the congressional committee charged with settling the dispute Rutherford B. Hayes, Samuel Tilden presidential election of 1876. Despite his challenges in the House, Garfield was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1880. He never took his seat, however, because of the events that transpired at the Republican Convention in 1880. The 1880 presidential convention found Garfield campaigning for his longtime friend and fellow Republican John Sherman. Because the party split between the stalwarts and the half-breeds, it took 36 ballots to choose a nominee. The delegates, in a surprise move, chose Garfield as the party's dark horse presidential nominee. To satisfy the stalwart faction, delegates chose New York Customs House collector Chester A. Arthur as the Republican vice president nominee. In the presidential election later that year, Garfield defeated his Democratic opponent, General Winfield Scott Hancock, by fewer than 10,000 popular votes. Following his inauguration on March 4th, 1881, Garfield spent most of his time on the job assembling his cabinet and making other appointments. Without a clear referendum in the election and due to the split in the Republican Party, Garfield had to appease both stalwarts and half-breeds in his appointments. The half-breeds were more instrumental in earning Garfield's nomination, and he appointed their leader, Senator James Blaine, as Secretary of State. Garfield named other half-breeds to important posts. As members of the stalwart faction received less significant posts, their leader, Senator Roscoe Conklin of New York, tried to block Garfield's nomination. Conklin later resigned in protest. After nearly 4 months of political wrangling and maneuvering, Garfield sought to finally move forward with his agenda for civil rights reform and other initiatives. However, a disgruntled attorney who was refused a political appointment changed all that. On July 2nd, 1881, Charles Guiteau fired 2 shots at Garfield while the president was en route to a Williams College reunion. As Garfield fell to the ground, Guiteau exclaimed, "I am a stalwart, and Arthur is president now." Guiteau was later convicted of Garfield's murder and executed by hanging in 1882. Garfield lay in the White House mortally wounded near death for almost 3 months. Doctors were unable to locate the bullet in his back. Boy, medicine's come a long way. Even inventor Alexander Graham Bell tried unsuccessfully to find the bullet with a metal detector he designed. On September 19, 1881, Garfield, age 49, died from an infection and an internal hemorrhage. He was buried in Cleveland. So this was just a very short political biography, basically, on Garfield. I got this from history.com, which is a bevy of information, not only for presidents, but about anything you want to know in history. So it's taken about 11 minutes to go through his political agenda because he really didn't have one. He didn't have a chance. He might have been a good president. He might have been a bad president. He might have been president irrelevant. It's something that we'll never know. So the only way that I could grade him in my mind is a 1 because, there's nothing there. He just didn't have a chance. So anyway, we're only 12 minutes into this, and there's really no use talking anymore about him because James Garfield, he just didn't have a shot. And again, I like to think that he might have been a good president, but when he had two sides of the party trying to appease both sides in a political party, I think he would have had just rough sledding all the way through office, but we'll never know. So again, a solid 1 for me, and let's move out of here with the national anthem. Again, I want to thank everybody for listening. I hope you're joining this exercise in history of dealing with 46 presidents, and I'm getting way ahead of the game. If you notice, even though this is coming out in December, I still got a scratchy voice because I'm in the second day of August, and I had the bug all last week. So anyway, thanks again for listening, and God bless you. God bless the United States of America, and I will talk to you on the next podcast.